try to do that all the time, but sometimes we're pretty mobile in this class, inside and outside and split up into groups. So the class recordings are not always going to be 100% of the experience. Let's run through the syllabus. Before we begin, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Do we have any grad students registered for the class, or is this straight undergrads from one end to the other? All right, here we go. Cool. I'm Dr. Logan Park, as I said. My office is down the furthest cluster on the right-hand side towards Thompson Woods. I'm in 194D as in dog or Delta. And you can catch me in person live 1 to 4 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes 1 to 3 p.m. if I get pulled into a meeting or something. I try to be as accessible to you as I can. And the main way to do that is going to be with that phone number. So if you want to, go ahead and capture that, 618-303-2799. I'm a Blue Bubbles person. And I'm available on a whole bunch of different kinds of social media, but I'm not going to be offended if it's weird to add your professor on social media. But if you don't like talking to professors face to face, that's fine. I get it. You can catch me on any of those. It'll be a little bit slower than text messages because I'm not in front of my computer at all times. But I'm happy to interface with you however you are most comfortable. So that's all available. I'll post this syllabus on our course website, of course, later today, so you have that available for your reference. If you catch me by email, be aware that as a professor, I get a lot of spam from unsavory nation-state actors trying to steal intellectual advancements of the United States research apparatus, and also people who are just trying to make a buck off, me and by proxy you guys by selling overpriced textbooks and stuff like that. It's a scam all the way down. So I will see something that you email me, but I won't see it near as fast as making my watch or my phone go off with a text message. All right? Happy to answer emails too, though, if you need. If you have any kind of individualized learning or mobility needs or dietary restrictions for a field trip or anything like that, that's all fine. That is not any serious impediment to your success in this class. Part of the point of interpretation is to make the topic of whatever you are bringing to the public and teaching them about, communicating with them about, helping them build some meaningful connections about, is all the diversity that comes along with the full array of humanity. Neurotypical, neurospicy, mobility, whatever. It doesn't matter. I will move heaven and earth for your success as professor of this class, but I have to have Achieve or DSS or whatever they're called now. I have to have their blessing to do it. So contact them, they contact me, we work out whatever it is you need, like note taker, extra time on quizzes or class activities, whatever. If we need to rework some part of the field trip so that it's safer and more effective for you, that also works through there. You can always also contact me directly, but for the official stuff, like getting one of your classmates paid a bunch of money or whatever to take notes for you and share notes, that all goes through Achieve. I don't have any money. All right. Purpose of the class. Environmental interpretation is the profession of building connections between protected areas like national forests, Shawnee, you may have heard of it, the many wilderness areas in Crab Orchard and the Shawnee, our state parks, national grasslands, seashores, our wild and scenic rivers, our national trails, our historic areas, our national military parks. The interpretive ranger is the one that's doing the connecting between somebody who's never been to Gettysburg before, never been to Antietam, Bull Run, never been to Gates of the Arctic, never been to the Shawnee, never been to any of the tiny little green space areas run by Greener, I think, right here inside Carbondale's metro boundary. And you're helping that person see that protected area as more than a bunch of trashy woods connected to a parking lot. There's a lot of layers going on there. Protected areas are like ogres and onions, lots of layers. So, Establishing personal relevance of and appreciation for a natural area often leads to behavioral changes among visitors to parks and wildlands. You can't change because of it if you don't know it. So, this is where we see people adopting pro-environmental behaviors, like maybe flying a little bit less and keeping our atmosphere a little bit slower thereby. Maybe switching to less of a gas guzzler vehicle because there's this thought in the back of your head, man, if I burn all of the liquefied dinosaurs and trees to power my massive truck just to like go get groceries, that's kind of a waste. What if I save some of that for getting out into the woods and get native a little bit? That's the power of interpretation, to change people's lives. So that's a pretty grandiose statement, and we're going to spend all semester sort of unpacking that, figuring out how that works, and what particular ways of doing interpretation. There's lots of different ways to do it that work best for you individually as a person. Okay? So this class is about communication, connection. It's about being an expert on the resource. So all of the other classes that you're taking in forestry and in geography or biology, botany, whatever, all of those feed into this class. We're going to use all of that knowledge, and instead of just brain dumping the stuff that you're learning in your classes into somebody's head, we're going to actually connect with people instead. Instead of like info dumping, which is not a lot of fun, not very interesting for the receiver of like the verbal diarrhea. Like, you can actually have some fun, make some connections, make some core memories with people. That's powerful stuff. So, in order to do that, we will examine the philosophies, ethics, and research methods, controversies involved with modern environmental, historic, and cultural interpretation within the context of park and wildland management. So, this is all in the context of park and wildland management because typically at any given national park, 1 out of 3 or more of the ranger staff are on the interpretive division. So when we get talking about our field trip for this class, we'll take a weekend, head over to like Mammoth Cave or somewhere. We'll make a list and vote on it. Mammoth Cave has dozens to up to over 100 interpretive staff to run that park because you can't just like turn a bunch of Boy Scouts and families with young kids and stuff like that loose in one of the largest cave networks in the world. You gotta help them understand where they are and be safe and fit or tailor their experience to their capacity, their appetite for different parts of it. And that's what this profession is all about. Okay? So this is being a park ranger, but a human-focused and a human-focused park ranger instead of one that's building a bunch of trails. Now, interpretive rangers do work on building trails, but not like long-distance backpacking trails. They build interpretive trails with a bunch of interesting signs or activity stations or photo points along the way to help open up what people are around and put that stuff that's around them into their awareness in a much more meaningful, deeper way than just like getting something for Insta with a filter, duck lips, and on to the next station. If that's all people are getting out of a place like a national park, then something's gone horribly wrong. Okay, let's see. You'll be given opportunities to synthesize the topic areas in the course. This is so grandiose. Synthesize the topic areas in the course into hands-on experience through numerous class exercises. So we're going to be sitting here as little as possible. We're going to be doing stuff most of the time in this class, hopefully, if I'm doing my job well. We'll have maybe a couple of quizzes, but a lot of the senior level forestry classes that are hands-on like this one tend to de-emphasize quizzes, midterms, exams, and emphasize stuff like hands-on practicals instead. So lots of lab exercises, relatively few quizzes. That means that the quizzes, because there are relatively few of them, they count for more per quiz, if that makes sense. All right? So we want to take that seriously when they come up. But this class is not, it's not intellectually challenging, I don't think. I mean, I already know all this stuff, so I'm a bad judge. But if if anybody, well, I have to say, if anybody feels like you're drowning with like difficulty or overload in this class, just come talk to me. Catch me during office hours, cash me outside, hit me up on socials. Don't slide into my DMs, it's weird. But just reach out, say, hey, Dr. Park, you're confusing me. And can we talk about this another way? Can you help me figure this out or sort of decode whatever it is you're trying to lay out there? I'm very happy to do that. In fact, that translation layer is a huge core component of interpretation. So we want to live that out in this class as well as professionally beyond the classroom. Our course learning objectives are basically in order. We're going to start with more of the lecture stuff to begin with. We're going to front load that and help you guys understand why you are doing some of the more hands-on stuff, like if you want to develop in comic books or interpret it. This is one of the worst reviewed comic books in history. And they handed them out like water for free at a whole bunch of national parks for like a decade. They couldn't even get rid of them. And that's right where we're going. That's so exciting. All right, we're gonna do a bunch of game development, game design. Like we can help folks connect with the natural world around them, the forests around them, through interactives like games, electronic, paper, analog, whatever. Anybody ever been to like a national park or national forest and done like a junior ranger guidebook? You got the cool little laser engraved wood junior ranger badge. Man, that's sick. In this class, we'll also talk about why we use words like sick to mean one thing other than a literal interpretation of the word. All right, so we're going to practice all this stuff. We're also going to take a look at some crucially important in the development of the United States as a thing. Things like The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, you may have heard. Or an absolutely fantastic lady named Rachel Carson, who changed your life and mine forever. Talk about how she did it through this book back in the day, as they say. All right? So, some of that is historical context. What's the historical development of environmental interpretation? It's a relatively young discipline. Forestry as a whole, a couple of hundred years old in its modern formation. We have tree husbandry, so taking care of trees for food and fuel and fiber and stuff like that, going way back into antiquity, of course. But modern forestry, a couple of hundred years old at best. We have one-off practices like tree coppicing and so forth, but as a profession, relatively young. Environmental interpretation, even younger, just barely over a century old. And we'll talk about some hilarious missteps along the way and some trash tier versus S rank options that have sort of separated out over time. We had to try a bunch of stuff and see what worked and what didn't to figure out how to do modern environmental interpretation. We'll get into it. All right, so what's the evolution in the context of park and wildland management? Why is a third or more, almost half of the staff at a place like Mammoth Cave, which is an important science site as well, there's a ton of scientists there, but there's even more interpreters. Why does that have to be that way? How did the history get us there? We'll demonstrate understanding of philosophies guiding environmental interpretation. Why do you have amphitheaters? Why have I sat through a goddamn PowerPoint presentation at 8 p.m. at Mammoth Cave in an amphitheater? PowerPoint in a national park. This is why we're doomed as a species. All right, moving on. So, what works? What doesn't? Why does it work? Why doesn't that work? Why don't we use PowerPoint as much as we can avoid it in environmental interpretation? Next, we'll identify, critically analyze, interpret examples from all over the world. I got lots of stuff from all over the United States, thousands of examples. One of your two optional textbooks is actually a really useful one for your professional library if you want to be any kind of a ranger. Any kind of a ranger. Science trails and wayside exhibits. It's very practical. It's got lots of pictures. Yeah. I know nobody reads anymore. This is a better comic book than the comic book. All right. So So, lots of examples there. We'll go through those, we'll analyze them. Like, why did they make that font choice? We'll have statements like, that was certainly a choice to do things this way versus that way. Lots of bad examples to learn from their fail. Lots of good examples to emulate and springboard up to the next level of excellence. So we'll go through a bunch of those. And we're going to do that in the context of the ethical framework or environment around that. So environmental interpretation is kind of a kissing cousin of marketing. And marketing is evil. I used to work in marketing analytics for a little while, and it is evil. Environmental interpretation, historic interpretation, telling stories of the Civil War, for example, and cultural interpretation, introducing us to the modern live cultures of various First Nations and indigenous groups here in the United States, and their reservations and territories and so forth, their sovereign nations. There's an ethical component to this, because in the curation of what you say and what you don't say in environmental interpret, this is what it calls interpret collectively. There's some pretty big moral and ethical decisions in what to say, what not to say, and how to say those things. They're big decisions ethically on how do you arrange the seats in the room to have that conversation. We'll talk about things like managing power dynamics in communication. So, this class is fundamentally in the forestry department, but human focused. We're going to rely on all of your hard work and all of your other classes for the content, what we are interpreting. And this class is figuring out how to do it. Does that make sense? All right, so I want you to bring your notes from other classes for use in this class. Unless you burn them in a trash barrel at the end of each semester. I get it. Let's see. Next, we want to identify key interpretive topics for specific protected areas. So there's a slate of particular topics at a place like Mammoth Cave National Park. And it's a different slate than at Ozark Scenic Riverways, even though the ecosystem, the underlying geology, and much of the Western cultural history post-1700 are almost identical between the Ozarks and southern central Kentucky. There are important and serious differences in what you talk about in each of those places, because they're not the same place. And so those lists should not be identical. So, how do you build that list? How do you winnow out that list down to the things that you really, really got to talk about versus the would-be nices if we had infinite money and infinite staffing, and nobody ever has that? Okay? We're also going to integrate insights from other disciplines that are not forestry. So communication, social psychology, cognitive theory, thinking about how we think. So meta. Behavioral psychology. Why do we do things the way that we do them? What triggers us into connecting with the history of a place, or the ecosystem of a place, or the social human history of a place, versus what kind of builds a low-key, as the youth might say, or high-key barrier to entry for that connection. Okay? My wife is a veterinarian and a neuroscience PhD. I'm married up, so we're going to borrow from a whole lot of these fields to have some interesting conversations about how we think and why we are the way that we are. Why can't we just be normal? All right, next up, practical skills. Demonstrate acquisition of professional skill sets so that you can apply to any of these many interpretive jobs at any scale, like St. Louis City Parks or county parks, the 11 billion private not-for-profits like St. Louis Science Center or City Museum, if you guys have ever been there. Everybody needs interpreters, because there's a lot of nerds who know a lot of stuff, but there's a fundamental disconnect in even just like the language, the words that we use, the vocabulary, the jargon that we choose as foresters. And there's a huge amount of loss in translation to the general public. Talk about how we can't assume that anybody we talk to has higher than a 5th or 6th grade reading level. That is quantitatively, objectively, fact only, the situation in the United States. The educational system is creaking under some cuts and some structural difficulties in the past couple of decades. So we gotta be aware of that, and we gotta not back down from that. We gotta step in and really engage with where people are, not where we wish they were or hope they are. We want to get them there, not expect them to be there. So, storytelling, guided hiking, public speaking, interpersonal engagement, writing non-staffed interpretive stuff like a comic book if you want to, or a book if you want to, or a junior ranger guidebook, or designing some interpretive signs. Walk around campus a couple of days and just look at a bunch of the interpretive signage around here. There's a ton of it. This is the kind of thing where we're exposed to this stuff all the time. And so from pattern blindness, we can kind of stop seeing it. So we're going to take those pattern blindness blinders off and learn to see the stuff and assess it, disagree or agree with some of the design choices, and then see how you might do better personally on that. All right, next, develop personalized, inclusive, and accessible interpretive activities. We are all different. I am middle-aged, white, Protestant, politically moderate, American, male, and weed, if you know what that is. And that's not most of you. So how do we talk with each other? We'll wrestle with that. That's non-trivial, okay? And how do we do that in a genuine and respectful and personalized to each group that we talk to, and accessible to anybody with any kind of neurodiversity or physical diversity or advantage or disadvantage, whatever. Socioeconomic background, right? This is a whole spectrum of everything. So, we'll get there. Next, create interpretive materials for own programs using drafting processes. The National Park Service employs thousands of interpretive rangers, and they do a pretty darn good job. And they do it by using particular frameworks developed by the Park Service internally. The United States National Park Service, as an organization just over 100 years old, literally invented this as a profession. And we'll read the Bible, the main playbook that the National Park Service used for almost a century as its primary guide for how to do all this stuff. It's amazing. It's not super boring and technical like a silviculture management plan. It's big on principle. And what that does is it unshackles you from having to find one specific right answer, one right way to do it. It's opening you up to, there are dozens or hundreds of ways to accomplish any of these important conversations in interp with people, with the publics, plural. Okay? So, we're going to practice a whole bunch of this stuff. Half or more of this class is going to be trying stuff on for size. If you've never made an interpretive board game before, it's really fun. It's even more fun than playing them, in my opinion. It's also really hard to design a good game. Like there's, show of hands, have you ever had a class that was technically competent and not a lot of fun? Okay. Game design is the same way. So we'll talk about principles of ludology, the study of having fun, and how do we make connection, not just learning. This is not an environmental education class. We're not training you to be teachers in this class. We are training you to be interpreters. They're adjacent. They are not the same thing. All right, so we're going to practice that a lot. Leading hikes with each other, playing each other's games, whatever. However the spirit so moves you. Next, we're going to apply process improvement techniques, as is done in the professional context, using program evaluation tools. So the first time you run any particular guided hike, it's going to go not bad. I mean, we'll plan for it to be an absolute trash fire, right? And that way we won't be disappointed if it goes just okay. That's way better than trash fire. But the last time you do it, 1,000 hikes later, hopefully that's not the exact same hike, right? The Japanese have a principle called Kanban, or continuous improvement through peer and self-review. We're gonna practice what the actual professionals do in terms of just kind of reflecting and asking what went well, what was I not a huge fan of, how would I do it a little bit differently next time?
to take the sting out of getting feedback from eventually the public, which can be brutal. We've all read some pretty funny Yelp reviews. 1-star national park reviews are hilarious. By sort of scaffolding that feedback process and turning it into a continuous revision and development. Okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit stale on this amphitheater campfire talk. How can I bring in something new? I've been learning about XYZ that's kind of adjacent to this. Maybe I could talk about that for part of that 45-minute campfire talk, or whatever. All right, a million different ways we can do that. Okay, so in order to accomplish those learning objectives, we have a couple of course materials. These are intentionally older editions, so you can find them for like $1 or $2 online to build your professional library, or download them from some virus written Russian site on my phone. I will post some PDFs of a bunch of additional resources on our course website, Redspace, mycourses.siu.edu, and occasionally, if the file is just way too big for that, I'll post it on my personal website, logan-park.org, in the For Students section. That website is kind of heavy. There's a bunch of big files on there. And it's a WordPress site, so it can crash phones, because WordPress is janky and old, but it's free. So you may want to visit logan-park.org in a real computer. I know nobody uses real computers anymore. It's all phones and iPads. But for the personal website, definitely go with a full-on laptop or desktop computer. Okay? So, Nuts and Cable and Beck, this is a standard text in the industry. These guys know this stuff inside and out, and they boil it down to be very, very digestible. This is not, you're not memorizing 200 species, Latin or Linnaean names, and taxonomy and leaf on and leaf off stuff. This is not a content course. This is a communication of that content course. And both of these texts are about those techniques, not the content. Grading system, super standard if you've ever taken any of my classes. A letter grade on every 10%. Here's the thing, guys. This is not a test for this heavy class. It's just not. A final exam is not going to be a pen and paper traditional final exam. It's the wrong tool. What we can do very successfully with this class is a whole bunch of hands-on stuff. So I gotta have you in this classroom. I'm recording this stuff, but watching or listening to that recording of my screen in learning about interactive stuff, it's not a great tool. It's a good backstop if you get COVID. Please don't come in if you have COVID, right? Like, be home, be well, be safe, flatten the curve. But it can be a seductive trap to be like, oh, well, maybe I'll just sleep in because, you know, the class even starts at, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I believe in your ability to get to this class on time and not oversleep. So, please participate, be present, and this class will sail along for you. It's not an intellectually difficult class. It can be a difficult class for anybody who's a strong introvert, because this is a communication class. And introverts spend a lot of energy to communicate. I'm a very strong introvert, and so I use a lot of the techniques in this class in my professional life generally. For an extrovert, this class will feel even easier because you get charged up by interacting with people. But introverts actually rule the world, as it turns out, when you do the research. So we'll talk about how introverts can rule the world in this class too. All right, so all I have to say, it doesn't matter what kind of a person you are. You can be highly successful in this class, even if you're not a real study buddy in the library 24 hours a day kind of a person. This is more of a technique development class than a memorize a textbook kind of class. So the big thing for this class is participation. I can't understand the awesome progress and the effort that you're pouring into this work if you're not here to do that, okay? So please show up. And by and large, we'll keep this class moving, generally speaking. It's fairly rare for this class to have like an hour and 15 minutes of just straight me talking at you like today. So, Any questions so far? All right. Our final exam is our cumulative or summative evaluation of your progress from the start of the semester to the end. And it's going to be in a project format. Again, a written test, not particularly useful for this class, not the right tool. So, instead, you guys will have basically the latter third of the entire semester to develop your best effort on whichever modality or style or format or structure of presentation, like book versus guided hike versus campfire hike, or talk versus games, whatever else. Those are all different modalities. You'll have some time to iterate on multiple drafts of that. And so a huge chunk of your grade in terms of the final, a quarter of your total grade, is what's the progress from your first draft of that, or those, if you do multiple smaller ones, to the last one where you say, Dr. Park, I nailed it. I felt really good about that last guided hike. I want you to grade me on that one. Okay? And part of the grade is the distance between where you started and where you finished. Don't worry about it. Everybody does awesome in this class. I'm so proud of my students. It's so cool to see. All right. For all of these class exercises, in the era of ChatGPT slop, to quote John Mayer, say what you need to say, and then please, for the love of God, stop. Please respect yourselves and me by not just waiting to rep for class and then prompting Gemini or ChatGPT or any of the others, Copilot or any of the other slop generators. They can write pretty good. What they can't do is reason ethically at all. They're not thinking machines. They're not spiritual machines. They are very, very, very sophisticated vector field equation systems of what word comes next, or what pixel comes next, relative to the pixels that I've started to denoise in the case of image or video generation. Okay? So, you're welcome to use ChatGPT or other assistive AI large language model tools, but you need to cite that. Okay? You're not writing that output. And if you're just editing it, you're not writing it. So, I'm not going to be mad at you. It's totally fine. If you don't feel like your grammar is amazing, or your spelling, you struggle with spelling you have your whole life, that's fine. Right? A lot of people do. Not a big deal. You can use those tools to help you say what you want to say, but if you're having ChatGPT do it for you, then you're wasting your tuition dollars, guys. Hugely. Okay? So, I'm not going to be mad at you if you use those things, just be honest about it. It doesn't affect your grade literally 1%. I don't mind. Totally okay. But you do want to, as you are putting this work out into the universe for other people to enjoy and meaningfully parse, meaning understand, you do want to proofread your work, right? So a lot of our stuff is going to be handwritten during class, and then the assignment will be to take it home, sleep on it, revise it the next day, revise it again before class, bring in the next draft of whatever it is that you're writing. And we'll have a bunch of those, and we'll kind of just iterate, so draft 1, draft 2, draft 3 on a lot of these different formats. And see what you like, see what you don't like, and you don't have to do stuff that you don't like after the first time. Late assignments will be penalized. We have a ton of throughput in this class. Like it's a lot of writing and design and practicing your guided hike out in Thompson Woods or whatever you want to do. So if anybody starts to get behind, it really starts to compound. It gets from one class behind to 5 classes behind in Foundering pretty fast. I don't want that for you. So even if you feel like you got, say, a draft to 80% of where you want it to be for this coming class session, bring in the 80%. I can work with 80%, okay? I'm not gonna get on your case if it's not perfectly baked the first or second or fifth time. All right, we have plenty of time to get there. So, stay on pace. If you miss something, this is in the syllabus. For each day that an assignment is late, 10% will be deducted. I'm not breathing down your neck with a stopwatch. This is mostly just to help people understand the importance of staying on time with it, okay? But if you're feeling sick, don't come in. I'm not going to be upset with you. I'm not going to give you a hard time about that. Just ask your classmates in particular, what did I miss on Monday when Park said he was going to talk about stuff? My car broke down on the way in, and I just didn't even get to campus until 6 p.m. that night. Help each other out. We're going to be doing a bunch of sort of ad hoc team stuff, like partner, 4 people, 6, 8 people. We got a nice big class this time around. So we'll be rotating on, like, so-and-so is leading a hike. They're taking 3 students with them as sort of their audience or participants. And then the next person out of that group of 4 goes. We'll be doing a lot of that. And in order to get the benefits of all that kind and generous and very useful feedback from your classmates, you got to be here to do it. So get into class if you can. You guys are all juniors and seniors pretty much, right? Not news for you. Okay. AI assist writing tools, must identify. Moving on. Let's talk about the field trip. But before we jump into dates and places, does anybody have any questions or concerns so far? Okay, cool. This class is much more useful and effective when we go somewhere and look how pros are doing this stuff, so that you see that I'm not just talking out of anywhere for this. You see how the Park Service does it, how the United States Forest Service does it, Fish and Wildlife. A couple of the top 6 reasons for the existence of the United States Fish and Wildlife is this stuff in different forms. Okay. So this is really important. Let's go see how anybody does it. Take a look at university examples, not-for-profit examples. If we go to the St. Louis area, Forest Park has a bunch of there's anybody ever been on like a haunted tour of downtown St. Louis? That's historic interpretation, right? So first off, let's pick where we would like to go. I've got 2 usual suspects on our list here. Mammoth Cave is about a 4 to 5 hour drive from university vehicles. I know it's closer than that, but university vehicles, we need to stop for fake breaks because whatever. Mammoth Cave is awesome. It is over 400 miles of mapped caves so far and counting. It is the largest mapped cave system in the world. It's pretty cool. And their main reason for existence is to preserve and protect the extremely fragile and unique cave ecosystem and tell some of the stories of the Native Americans, the settlers, the modern day locale human history, as well as all of the super interesting bat and white nose syndrome and climate change and tectonics and earthquakes and all the science that's happening at that park as well. Really cool spot. Pretty cool. It's developed camping at the campground right there by the visitor center. There's also a lodge. There's a little camp store. Some buying geodes, not mobile on a rock hammer. Mammoth Cave is pretty cool. We go on 1 or 2 cave tours, depending on the schedule that we set up. And we sit around the campfire and debrief each day after hiking and cave touring and kayaking and morel hunting from the time which is right, so on and so forth. Or like a Friday afternoon to Sunday morning to day, Sunday afternoon kind of a trip. If we instead go west towards the northern Ozarks, but not quite all the way to the northern Ozarks, we go to the St. Louis Zoo, which does a lot of environmental interpretation, very little cultural or historic. So we pair that with the St. Louis Science Center. Anybody ever been there? Okay. And sometimes we go to City Museum, the first museum that I've ever encountered with multiple bars. Any other places that you guys are aware of, maybe that you haven't had a chance to go to yet, but you know or suspect strongly that they do a bunch of environmental interpretation? We've got about a 4-hour driving radius, which will get us to Mammoth Cave, or maybe there's a bunch of historic interpretation at Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area, Murray, Kentucky. a little bit closer, hour plus away. We could do our field trip on the Shawnee. There's a bunch of stories to tell around Crab Orchard and Shawnee and Giant City State Park. Historic, ecological, cultural. Man. We could go right past St. Louis to places like some nature conservancy tracts of land, Peck Wildlife Ranch, elk rehab and stuff. National Park Service runs Ozark National Wild and Scenic Riverways. The first riverways of the National Wild and Scenic River System, established 1968, kicked off a whole bunch of farmers from the land and said, and it's ours now, for the good of all Americans, we hope. And that was controversial. That was a hot take in the late 1960s. But we have that as a very interesting and well done set of historic and environmental interpretation there. So, Ozark National Scenic Riverways. This one involves typically some canoeing as well as some walking around and camping in different spots along the river as we go. Other suggestions, nominations? This is the moment to speak your truth. Yeah. Garden of the Gods. Shawnee National Forest, you got it. I'm assuming Garden of the Gods, Illinois, not Colorado. I wish. Okay. Yeah. I stand Garden of the Gods. It's an unhealthy relationship, but I love it. Alright. Other places. Can't quite get all the way to Chicago. I think Starved Rock is up by Chicago, is that correct? Well, maybe. If it's 2 hours south, that's 4 hours. Means Mike could, as they say in the rural south. Alright, we'll put it on the list. Try it out. Missouri Department of Conservation has a whole bunch of pretty awesome sites based on a luxury tax on sody pop and stuff like that funds conservation efforts in the state of Missouri. Totally different funding structure than here in Illinois, so we have a whole bunch of places that Illinois would love to have but can't afford because the money is very similar. I don't know. Any other nominations? Yeah.
National River, but also Eureka Springs is kind of close, so.
Sorry, what springs?
Eureka Springs.
Eureka Springs. I like it. That's a good one. It's a very good one. Okay. That's a pretty good list. Let's go ahead and let's take about a 3-minute break, stretch your legs, and get some water because your brain is an electrolytic piece of meat that works better when fully hydrated. And get your pulse up for a sec. We'll reconvene in 180 seconds. Then we'll get at it.
supposed to have for upcoming, I needed to finish that sentence, not just say it. I'm fine, everything's fine. I might not be after this week's section.
I don't know. I'm gonna see if I can make it to this week's.
If not, then it just means I need to push it back for another week. Okay, that's fine, everything's fine. It's okay, I'm not mad, it's fine. Hold it under no pressure. You're thinking, or? I've never been to, I've just noticed. I want to, mostly because it's an excuse to use a bow and arrow if it doesn't tree.
Get out.
Yeah.
Okay, so, does anybody have any questions or not full clarity on any of our potential destinations? We've got enough in the magazine to get to one of these. If we go to Shawnee Crab and Garden of the Gods, we can go to several local spots, break it up a little bit. Otherwise, it'll be a 2.5 day weekend field trip. I have a bunch of camping gear, tents, sleeping bags, sleeping pads, all that stuff. I run one of our 2 forestry summer camps. We got a whole bunch of gear in the cache. So don't let that be an impediment to where you want to go if you don't have those things already. Let's vote for as many of these as you like, and we'll see if there's sort of a clear winner, and maybe go through one or a couple of rounds if we need to narrow it down from there. Okay, so hands up if you are interested in going to Mammoth Cave, a world-class interpretive set. All right, thank you. Hands up if you're interested in sort of greater metro, so like Hahn State Park, St. Louis Zoo, Science Center, City Museum, other targets of opportunity over that away. Wow. Wow. Fat goose egg. Okay. Shawnee National Forest plus Crab Orchard. Beautiful new visitor center. Anybody ever been to the It's nice. Okay. Garden of the Gods, inclusive of Shawnee and Giant City State Park. We learn a little bit of the history of the Civilian Conservation Corps. Hands up for local. All right. Ozark National Scenic Riverways, a hybrid water and dismounted, so on foot, interpretive tour through the landscape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Starved Rock State Park, driving north. I'll get there one of these years. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Buffalo River in Eureka Springs, so a little bit further south, if I recall correctly. But also Great Canoeing. 1, 2, 6, 7. Well, Mammoth Cave has outscored everybody. Closest is 80% of the way there at Ozark Scenic Riverway. So let's pick a date. So pull out your smart dopamine devices, dopamine delivery devices, and maybe that'll influence a second vote. Yeah. But it'll be down to Mammoth Cave and Ozark Scenic Riverways. There's not really
any bad choices, so I'm not upset either way. Okay. Cool. Alright, everybody got your phone? Cool. So, earlier, colder, potentially, although it was like 67 degrees here like 2 days ago in mid-January, so we'll be alright either way. Fewer ticks, but potentially colder at night. That's why we have nice warm sleeping bags. Closer towards the end of the semester, could be busy, could be stressful with on-rushing exams and stuff like that for one of our final weekends. And potentially more things like ticks to worry about, and spring break along the way knocks out two of our primary candidates. I'm already heading to Clifty Wilderness area with the Wilderness Management class on February 20th or 22nd, or our fallback date is March 29th, that weekend. So let's narrow down or cross off from our list of available weekend dates from this column to the right. So, anybody super offended if we don't go on Valentine's Day weekend? If we're a class full of forever alones, maybe it doesn't matter, but I don't want to like harsh anybody's mellow with that. Okay to cross it off? Salute. Okay, polar bears this weekend? This weekend is not on our list, conveniently. Don't say I never helped you. All right, for those of you who are interested in that. Conclave is when? Forestry Conclave? It's in April, but I don't remember exactly when. Okay. Might be able to look that one up here real quick. Just a second. Conclave is the 10th through 12th. You want to step on that one? That's lots of fun. Okay. From this list, does anybody have a religious holiday that they prefer not to skip out on, or anything else like less common something like a wedding one of these weekends, or other things like Tour de Harbordale, that's going on anymore, or Solar Bear, prom? I don't know. You guys? I went to college in the deep south where like cotillion and prom was this huge, ridiculous deal. Anyway, anybody need to strike any other weekends off of our list before we rank order those? Good to go? Not going on any of them.
Can't go on it.
Okay, that's fair. We do have an alternative field trip option if anybody needs to like work to keep a roof over your head, or like work all the weekends, or for any other reason. It's basically doing what we're doing on a field trip, but you're doing it on your own. So you have a chance to see some of this stuff in the wild, usually more locally, like around Carbondale or on the Shawnee, any point throughout the semester. So that should be a fair option for anybody. It counts exactly the same as going on the field trip, but I handle all the logistics for you on the field trip if you go with us. So, okay. So vote for if you are super duper in favor of whichever the weekend is. Again, this would be like Friday noon to Sunday noon or mid-afternoon. Try to get you guys back so you can shower up, do any homework due on Monday and stuff like that. Hands up if you want to go Jan 30 to February 1. Zero. Okay. February 6th to 8th. Valentine's Day is off. February 27 to March 1st. Okay. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. Those people. Spring break. March 20th through 22nd. Okay. April 3rd through 5th. April 17th through 19th. Second half of April. Okay. I think that pretty well sets it for end of February into March. Is that reflective of everybody's understanding? Pretty good with that so far? Okay. Please, if you are, and I'll try to reiterate this as much times as we go, let me know if you can't go on a field trip as early as possible. Every year there's like one person who just like gasses out Friday morning and we're like waiting for them, but we don't know where they are, and then we try and chase them down with text messages and it's awkward and we lose like an hour and waste everybody's time. So, all I have to say, again, the alternative field trip is exactly the same grade weight as the organized trip, but just let me know so I can manage the trip. Cool. All right. Given that we are going February 27th through March 1st, typically the weather at Mammoth and at Ozark Scenic Riverways is similar. Latitude is about the same, so general average temperature about the same. The spring-fed Ozark National Scenic Riverways water is a constant 50, 60 degrees, almost exactly the same temperature as Mammoth Cave. So, I don't think that weather differences really make much difference between those top two. But, given that it's end of February into March, let's vote again for Mammoth Cave. You can vote for both of them if you would like. Mammoth Cave versus Ozark Scenic Riverways, Missouri Department of Conservation, the Nature Conservancy, Wildlife Ranch, spots like that for environmental, historic, cultural interpretation. Votes for Mammoth Cave. You can vote for one or both. Okay. And Ozark Scenic Riverways. Vote for this one as well if you would like. 1, 2, 3. Interesting. Okay. Cool. So we're going to Mammoth. Awesome. How many of you guys and gals, non-binary pals, have ever been to Mammoth Cave before? All right. You're good to go. Right? It's a pretty cool place, right? It's decent. It's better than a shark stick in the eye, in my opinion. I would never force that on you. Let's see. Mammoth Caves Visitor Center recently underwent like a 2.5-year long, it was a major multi-million-dollar expansion and renovation of the visitor center, specifically the interp stuff. And even the architecture of the building itself is used to tell some interesting and important stories. It'll be a real good trip. Alright, so as our class sessions creep closer to the end of February, we will get after the logistics like food and stuff like that. Good deal. Any questions at this point about the field trip? Any questions at all?
What time would you be around?
We'll decide as a class, but usually it's something like somebody inevitably has a morning test on Friday, and the trip is pretty flexible as far as that goes. We've left as early as 6 a.m. And as late as, I really don't want to leave after like 2 or 3 p.m. It's hard to set up camp and get excited like in the dark. But, yeah. Other questions? It is totally developed camping. There's like power flush toilets. Might even be Wi-Fi now in the campground. It's nice if you're into the whole ubiquitous connectivity thing. And I think right now the pendulum swings back and forth. But for those of you who like to partake in recreational molecules, Cave County is not currently a dry county. It has been in the past, which leads to very, very long drives and numerous vehicles for those who are alcohol because beer is important at this age. But I think that's all sort of fine and available at the camp store or there's a lodge right next to the visitor center where you can get an overpriced meal and use it if you want. For all adults, that's all fine. Cool. Let's see. That is that for the field trip. Again, later on we'll worry about stuff like menu and gear and all of that. If anybody has any food allergies or refrigerated medication needs or like scheduled controlled medications or anything mobility needs that we want to know about for like a 4-hour cave tour, so we're not like forcing you to do something that's not the right fit for you. That's totally fine. Just let me know. We'll organize like a DC 12 volt cooler if you have an insulin injector or an EpiPen or something like that. We usually have something like that on every trip, so it's not weird or anything like that. Part of my job is to make this as successful for you as possible. So if you have any of that stuff as a consideration, just let me know in confidence, by email, text message, or come after during office hours, Tuesday or Thursday afternoons around this time, in 194D. It's my office over there. And you're just taken care of, right? And we'll keep it all confidential. It doesn't have to be anybody else's business. Okay, cool. This year we have the opportunity to do some service learning stuff in and around Carbondale. The Morton Arboretum in town, the Marbury Arboretum, as well, is right here. And Arboreta they're in our wheelhouse. They're our jam. And often we can do a bit of good as we learn through the service. It is important that you understand that all service learning opportunities on campus, regardless of class, are voluntary. You don't have to do like trail maintenance or signage design or pamphlet design on Green Earth trails here in town or whatever as part of your grade. It's a wonderful learning opportunity to give back from the privilege of being here to learn all this stuff. But again, it does not, and it's important that I underscore, cannot affect your grade either way. I'm happy to offer extra credit if anybody's worried about the grade, but yeah. Okay. So we'll develop this every year. That slate of service learning opportunities looks a little bit different. So I'll be pinging Carbondale City Parks, Green Earth Incorporated, and our university facilities folks about the different arboreta and trails and stuff like that. This all sort of goes without saying, but just so we can say we said it, like don't cheat in this class. I don't know what that would even look like, but whatever. Your work needs to be your own. Again, if you're using generative AI, that's fine, and I can encourage that if that's a writing aid for you, but just simply cite it, let me know. I'm not going to look down on you if you use ChatGPT at all. It's not even like a little bit weird or awkward. Just identify it as such. Cite your work. Plagiarism is a serious offense, and only once in almost 20 years of being a professor have I had to drop the hammer of God and justice on somebody who misrepresented their work in someone else's. And it was a slaughter, guys. Man, like it's funny in retrospect, but man, it was really uncomfortable and kind of horrible. So, that's rarely ever a problem. I'm not worried about it with you guys, but please just be honest. That's fine. Let's see, large-scale emergencies. If we have an active shooter situation or the quaternary fault system pops off and we get a magnitude 9+ earthquake in this area, or tornado, lightning strike, 3 forestry professors have been put in the hospital in years past from protective does guarding their fawns in Thompson Woods. If anything happens, keep calm, carry on, right? Get instructions. We'll lock down the room and either shelter in place or flee, as the case might be, for an active shooter. I was a student at Virginia Tech when that mass shooting happened. It was pretty wild, but by and large, most or all of us will very, very likely survive it. So it's bizarre to me to even have this conversation, but that's the world we live in now. So, in case of a large-scale emergency, we have systems in place to respond to these things as safely as possible. Don't lose your mind, and we'll get you taken care of as best as anybody can. Okay? Cool. Schematic schedule. We'll finish up with this. Introductions, definitions, foundations, field trip setup. We'll do most of the content stuff in our coming class on Wednesday in terms of definitions and foundations. And we'll also introduce ourselves to each other. This is a super duper interactive class, so our note cards here are going to be helping us map out our introductions. Week 2, we're going to learn about how we wrap everything around themes. What is the point of the insert? We're not just trying to look busy, we're not trying to overwhelm people with our impressive array of factoids. Factoids are information without much context. Instead, we're going to take a specific provocative perspective on some event or phenomenon or person or group of people or society or whatever, and use that as a structure and order and a reason, justification for the interp, as well as a way to order it and outline it, which is our week 3 task. So we'll talk about why we don't use scripts, why we don't memorize a bunch of stuff. Instead, we just kind of gush about something, a topic, a resource, an ecosystem, a people group, whatever, that we're just absolutely smitten with. In this class, we talk about love, like seriously. And that's going to be in our outlines and themes weeks. And by week 4, 5, and 6, we are looking at modalities, all the different ways to deliver the formats, the structures, sequences of how to deliver that stuff. Got a million examples of those, so we'll start by learning from others. It's a process called surrogation, so learning from others' successes and failures before we jump in and start working on our own. So we'll start with staffed modalities, guided hikes, stuff like that, and then move it into non-staffed modalities as we're pushing up towards spring break. And then from there, we will do staffed and unstaffed games and gamified interpretation. And then finish out the last quarter of the semester with basically iterating on whatever designs you want to carry to a further degree of completion. Never say it's fully complete or finished, because it's a lot more interesting if these are living, evolving, breathing things. I'm speaking figuratively, not actually creating life in this class. That's on your own recreational time. All right. Any questions about our schedule and where we're going? All right, cool. So we're going to end it with, I'm excited about this class because it's actually kind of interesting and fun, and it's a good kind of a challenge. So thank you guys for being willing to jump in with me and step up to the interesting challenges and opportunities we're going to be cooking up all semester long. Hang on to those note cards, bring them back for Wednesday's class, and we'll get into it then. I'm around for questions if you have them, or if you need to let me know about anything for a field trip or learning accommodations, whatever you need.